Good morning, my name is Mike. I'm an alcoholic. I've done the work out of the book with a Big Book Step Study sponsor, Loving God, meetings like this, people like you. I have a few more amends left to make. I'm practicing the entirety of the AA program every day. So we're sitting here and we're reading this today, and it's step 11. And I try to think what step 11 would be like if I had just walked in the door and this was my first AA meeting. There's no mention of drinking at all in the entire step. Why is that in an AA meeting? I don't get it. The word God is in there. I took a quick count, 5, 6, 7 times. Priests, rabbis. What is this about? I didn't sign up for this. I just not want to drink. Meditation? I don't get it. Now do I need to buy an incense burner and practice the lotus position? What's the relevance here to somebody that maybe last night got into some trouble drinking and stumbled into an AA meeting and wants to learn how to stop drinking? If you're in this room today, chances are that you had a problem with alcohol or drugs. I know that's the only reason I ended up here. I wasn't at the top of my game when I got into AA by any stretch of the imagination. It was probably an all-time low. I'm the kind of, I don't go to things that are good for me. I don't do that. Of my own volition, I don't do that. On my own, I used to hate that. Like, it's for your own good. Yeah, well, all right. So now we have this step 11. Well, to me, 11, I guess, suggests that there's 10 other steps before that. And I guess to be effective at doing this step 11, I should have at least done some preliminary work up to that point. As it turns out, in my case, and in the case of many people, the preliminary work is a lot of engagement, a lot of work. So those earlier steps do, in fact, address my drinking problem, and what I can do to alleviate that, to get a reprieve from that, to not be under the throw of alcohol, because I was a prisoner of alcohol and I didn't even know it. The shackles were invisible, but they were there and they were strong. Alcohol directed what I was going to do, where I was going to work, where I was going to go, who I was going to be with. It controlled every facet of my life, and I really had no idea. You know what? That's probably not accurate. I was deluding myself. I was lying to myself and telling myself that everything's fine. If only other people would do what I want, everything would be fine. If only they would leave me alone, everything would be fine. The wife, the courts, the employers, they just don't get it. Well, unfortunately, there's only one common denominator in all those disparate groups of people, and that's me. So I stumble into AA, beaten at the end of my rope, still not thinking there is any problem whatsoever. Quick history of drinking, drank like a pig for 25 plus years. End of story. If you don't know how to drink, you probably don't belong in this room. I think everybody in here knows how to drink. So I go to an AA meeting, and I hear some things, and I hear some amazing things. I don't ever forget the first AA meeting that I went to. I heard people talking about how they drank, and about how they lied, and about how they stole and cheated, and all the things I did. It was so bizarre to hear my thoughts coming from other people's mouths. And I had a realization that night. Either everyone in the room was lying, or I was the one with the problem. I got myself a sponsor to work the steps. There's 2 parts of the AA program of recovery, the fellowship part and the program part. The program part is written in this big book. This group makes those available, so if you don't have a copy for your personal use, please feel free to take one with you. And that was the instruction set on how this first group of alcoholics got sober, found permanent contented sobriety, and were able to lead, get this, useful lives. I wasn't useful to anyone. I was a menace. I was a menace at work. I was a menace at home. I was a menace on the road. So I get this sponsor. We're on step 11. I will get to that. I get this sponsor, and we start doing some of the work the way it's laid out in the book. And for the first time in my life, I'm able to mostly, I'm not going to lie too much, I'm able to mostly follow directions. And so under his guidance, this was a man that had done the work before me. He had gone through this work, and as part of his recovery, he helped other people, other men, to their recoveries, and that's what he did with me, and we followed the directions. And these early steps do help me to find a way to control my desire for a drink, because I wake up in the morning and I want to drink. It's on my mind all the time. The obsessive thoughts, I need to drink. And the early steps give me a way to take that away. I have no power over alcohol, and I proved that to myself in 20 plus years of drinking. And my only hope is to find a source of power. And that's where they talk about the God of your understanding. And that's when a lot of new people go, oh, geez, really? And I get that. I didn't have any concept of any kind of a God when I walked in the doors of Alcoholics Anonymous. I just wanted the heat turned down. Not necessarily even off. Just lower the flame a little. I can deal with the simmer. That's what I thought. So the people said, you don't have any power over this, so you're never going to be able to beat it on your own. And if you're a real alcoholic, that's the truth for you. That's the bad news. The good news is that power greater than myself was readily available to me, and all I had to do was ask, very simply. In step 3, I make a decision that, the way of life I was leading, God bless you, had me crash and burn, and so now I'm going to try something different. And so they begin to talk about the God of my understanding. And what does that mean? That means if there's 80 people in this room, that means 80 different things, I would suspect. There may be a lot of similarities, but my God is personal to me. And the truth is, and I wish I could just, if you haven't experienced it, I wish I could give you the experience. But the truth is, when you ask a power greater than yourself, the God of your understanding, for help with things, that help comes. And if you've experienced that, once the idea moves from your head to your heart, it's unshakable. And that's my belief today. That's my honest belief. The truth is, the God of my understanding did for me what I couldn't do for myself. Plain and simple. Plain and simple. Early on, by following the suggestions, the obsession to drink was removed. I haven't had the obsession to drink in a long time, not through anything. All I do is I ask the God of my understanding every day to take that obsession away. I haven't had those thoughts in a long time. Now, if I stopped that, would those thoughts come back? I have no idea. Quite honestly, maybe, maybe not. I'm not willing to take that chance because I know what I was like before. I remember most of the behaviors. There's a lot of blackouts I'll never get back, but... And so I do this work. I get the God of my understanding, and as I go through it, one of the core principles, I think, of this program of recovery is to develop a relationship with the God of my understanding. And it tells me in the book. Now, I've been reading this book with my sponsor. We're through a bunch of these steps. And so, for me, everything that's been told to me from there has come to pass. So I have to believe it. And it talks about a God of my understanding that will solve all my problems. Now, that doesn't mean bags of money are going to drop from the sky at my feet, but it's going to solve my problems of how do I deal with people in a rational adult way? How do I not think about alcohol every minute of the day? How do I not steal to support my habits? How can I not lie when it's always easier for me to lie because I don't want to get in trouble, because I don't want to tell the truth? Those are the problems that the God of my understanding can solve. So now we're sitting here today, and it's step 11, And you'll hear people today share remarkable stories of how they've connected with the God of their understanding, and these things have come true for them also. And I remember thinking, that won't work for me. I suck too bad. I've done too much stuff. The truth is, there's nothing special about me. The truth is that the God of your understanding will not ignore you. That's been my personal experience. I know it's true, and that's been my experience from hearing since day one at these meetings. People testify to that fact. And so I get to this point, to step 11, and, in hindsight, looking back, it seemed unattainable at the time. And it seemed, I read these steps on the wall, and I didn't get it. Now I get it. Coming through and up to this point, I get it. And so there's some really terrific direction in here for this. Because in the last step, I learned, that my goal now is to be of maximum service to the God of my understanding and to other people. And how do I get that? Well, I get that by getting closer to that God, and I get that by listening and following his direction. Suggest prayer and meditation. I still, I'm lying. I do have an incense burner. I don't use it when I meditate. There is excellent direction in here. When I retire at night, I constructively review my day. I don't beat myself up. You know what? I make a lot of mistakes. I make plenty of mistakes. We can get my wife on the phone. She'll tell you. It says, was I resentful, selfish, dishonest, or afraid? Yes, 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 yes. Yes. Do I owe an apology? Probably. Have I kept something to myself which should have been discussed? Maybe. Was I kind and loving toward all? Most days, not. I try. I mostly try. Or was I thinking about myself? Yeah, well, probably. So at night I can do these things, and I can ask for some direction for the next day. Now, I don't do a lot at night. I'm a morning guy, and so there's some direction for that. On awakening, let us think about the 24 hours ahead, so I can kind of plan my day out. I start this, like I said, I tumble out of bed. It's 2 or 3 steps down, 3 if the dog's there, and I fall to my knees and I ask for that obsession to drink to be removed. I do this virtually every day. I can tell the truth about that one, because the result has been so tremendous that, like I said, I wouldn't want to get rid of that. And then I go about my morning. I have to be on time to work, and I'm blessed in where I work. There's a small chapel, and I'm able to go there and spend 3, 4, 5 minutes every morning in prayer and meditation with the God of my understanding. And, I came to understand prayer is talking to God, asking for help. God, today, help me not to lie a whole lot. Help me not to be senselessly fearful. Help me not to be selfish. And the meditation is listening for the response. Now, I don't get a big booming voice in my head that's God talking to me, but it talks about an intuitive thought that might spring up that comes out of nowhere, seemingly. For me, I understand now it's not out of nowhere. I ask God to divorce my thinking from self-pity, dishonest, or self-seeking motives. And these are the core of my character defects. My selfishness, my delusion, my fearfulness. And that I do every day. And I ask God to make me a little less selfish. Before I sat down here, I asked the God of my understanding, just to speak through me, to help me to do what was asked of me in terms of what he would want. I hope that comes through. My prayer has changed over the years. In the beginning, there's a number of set prayers in the text, in the directions, and this is the textbook. This is, Getting Sober for Dummies, essentially. They keep rejecting my idea for a yellow cover. About copyright, I don't know. But there's some beautiful set prayers in there. The third step prayer that asks to be removed from the bondage of self. What a lovely sentiment, huh? Think less of me and more of you today. That's what I'd like to do. That's my goal. You know, the seventh step prayer talks about remove my fear. I'm afraid of everything. I'm still afraid of everything. But with these prayers, with the God of my understanding, with the relationship that I develop up to this point, I can ask, please remove my fears. And it tells me again, and I got to believe it because everything else has been true up to this point. It says, at once, your fears are beginning to be removed. So I'm not cured of that, but I'm a little better. I'm okay with it. You know, and those set prayers, I use those for a lot of years in my morning and throughout the day. There's some others in there that are very good. But I've found that over time, as I've developed this relationship, you know, the relationship with the God of my understanding is really no different than meeting and making a relationship with any other person. If you meet a person that you'd like to be friendly with, you don't know that person very intimately to begin with. If it's someone that you'd like to associate with, you spend time, you talk, you listen, you develop that relationship. And that's how it's had to be with me, with the God of my understanding. I've had to develop that relationship over time. It takes time. It takes practice. I have to be willing to work at it. I need to be willing to work at any relationship, whether it's with work, at home, my kids. All relationships take work if they're going to be any good. And this relationship is no different, I don't think. For me anyway, I get into it. You know, the truth is I get out of it 10 times what I put into it. But I try to put into it. And so my prayers have evolved over time. And I don't use these set prayers very much anymore. I've sort of built on those and developed those. And now, much to my amazement, I realize in the past year or so, my prayers in the morning at that small chapel are geared more towards other people. I pray for a certain number of people in my life. I pray that, you know, God guides my hand and my mouth through the day. You know, show me what you'd have me be. You know, it says what used to be a hunch or an occasional inspiration gradually becomes a part of the working mind. And that's been my experience. Again, it doesn't happen overnight. Much as I would like to be able to say, you finish reading this chapter, and you're just like, you get a jolt and you're good to go. That's not what happens. That's not what happens. You know, some other beautiful, beautiful suggestions here as we go through the day. When agitated or doubtful. Who doesn't encounter those sensations in the day? Agitated or doubtful. I doubt myself all the time. I get agitated easily when people don't do what I want them to do. I constantly remind myself I'm no longer running the show. Now, so I'm agitated. Sometimes I go at the agitation and it blows up. That happens. More often than not, I'm able to stop and say, God help me. Now, that's all I need to do for prayer. I don't need to get on my knees. I don't need to put a robe on and chant. God help me. It's that simple. And it works. It doesn't always work. And I'm lying again. It never works the way I expect it will work. But it always works. It always works. It works. It really does. No kidding. That's the truth. That's the God's honest truth. We alcoholics are undisciplined. I'm very undisciplined. Left to my own devices, I'm undisciplined, I'm lazy, I lie, and I think about myself. If I don't go to the God of my understanding, I'm pretty sure I will slip back into those things. It's really just stemming the flood by doing that prayer. So I let God discipline me in the simple way that's been outlined. They just spent, God bless you, they just spent 80 pages outlining that. And that's my experience. You know, so I guess if I wanted people to take away anything from this today, it's that it works, it really does, and it can work for anybody that applies a little willingness. Thank you.